It was a story so incredible, it was turned into a Hollywood movie.
They wanted to go and rob the stuff from people that they actually admired and envied.
A crew of wealthy, spoiled kids invading the homes of the rich and famous.
They were dancing in her shoes, they were trying on her clothes, kind of having a little bit of a party.
Snatching Gucci purses, diamonds, and pearls. It was honor among thieves.
We had each other's backs, so we were, there for each other.
But when the walls started closing in, it was every man and woman for themselves.
The group quickly spiraled out of control as they all turned against one another.
Their good looks and devil-may-care attitude made them legendary.
What I've never quite understood about the Bling Ring story was for how long they got away with it.
Their brazen Hollywood heist would make them notorious. Throughout American history, hardened criminals have banded together to commit brazen robberies. But never before had the world seen a group of wealthy, multicultural teens commit a string of daring, audacious robberies. That was until the notorious Bling Ring. From late 2008 through the fall of 2009, news spread throughout Los Angeles that a gang of thieves was targeting the homes of Hollywood celebrities. The robbers' victims included A-list stars such as Paris Hilton, Orlando Bloom, Megan Fox, and Lindsay Lohan.
The victims were attractive, famous celebrities who were always in the gossip column or being filmed in upscale parties and clubs.
The Bling Ring is a bunch of spoiled, privileged people who went around robbing people who were more spoiled and more privileged than they were.
This was celebrity, this was crime, this was rich California people being ripped off by teenagers who saw fame and fortune right in front of them all the time and decided to grab it for themselves.
While many infamous gangs starred in prison or in the mean streets of America's toughest cities, the Bling Ring started in the most unlikely of places, at Indian Hills, an alternative high school near Calabasas, an extremely affluent suburb of Los Angeles.
Calabasas is about 30 minutes from the Hollywood Hills. It is the epitome of comfortable suburbia.
Ken, to your right.
Most famous at the time for being home of the Kardashians, Calabasas was also home to a shy, awkward 18-year-old named Nick Prugo.
His father was an executive with an international film distribution company.
But despite his idyllic setting and family's wealth, Prugo had struggled in school due to his ADHD and often skipped class due to his anxiety.
Prugo never had many friends in an earlier part of his life and took several medications to calm his anxiety.
Prugo ditched so many classes that he was kicked out of Calabasas High and enrolled at Indian Hills Continuation School, an alternative high school for teens who, for one reason or another, didn't fit in.
It was at Indian Hills where Prugo's social life took off and he began making connections that would affect the rest of his young adult life.
The shy Prugo had been an outcast in regular high school, but at Indian Hills, all of that would change when he met the outgoing Rachel Lee.
Lee lived in Calabasas with her mother. She grew up in a privileged environment and drove a white Audi to school. She attended Indian Hills with Prugo because, like him, she had been expelled from Calabasas High School.
According to her fellow students, she really stood out because of her outfits. I mean, when they rolled up just wearing their shorts or their jeans, she would be there in the latest designer outfit, just like the ones the celebrities would wear.
She just started talking to me, and I liked her, and we just started talking, and it just clicked. I mean, I really don't, it's just one of those things that happened, and we got so close.
They bonded on a number of levels. They were both in a new school environment, they were experiencing difficulties with their parents, and they were both abusing drugs.
Prugo had been prescribed Adderall for his ADHD, but was abusing the medication.
Adderall can be considered a gateway drug. What it does is it primes someone to be out of their own body and out of their own mood state. What we're seeing in our society is that teens are misusing Adderall, taking doses in larger quantities than they actually need, crushing the Adderall up, snorting them, and what they're looking to achieve there is a higher high and a quicker absorption into their body system.
It wasn't long until Prugo and Lee had moved on from prescription pills. The two were soon partying and doing cocaine together. Nick's habit became so bad, he began resorting to desperate measures.
I started stealing from my parents for money for these drugs.
But according to Prugo, Lee soon came up with another idea to get money. She suggested they commit a robbery.
Their first burglary together occurred sometime during the summer after 10th grade. Prugo claimed that Lee suggested they steal from the residence of an acquaintance in Woodland Hills, whom he knew to be out of town at the time.
Prugo would later tell detectives that he had deep reservations about committing the crime, and that he only went along with the plan because he didn't want to risk losing Lee's friendship.
During that first burglary, they reportedly discovered $8,000 in cash hidden under a bed.
With the loot from the robbery in hand, Prugo quickly forgot about his reservations.
The two split the money, and the next day went on a shopping spree on Rodeo Drive to celebrate.
When people steal, what they're really looking for is the high around taking something that's not theirs.
Prugo and Lee had experienced a rush from spending the money without any consequences.
It kind of created a perfect storm for them to give themselves permission to act out and steal from other people.
And they were going to up the ante. For their next burglary, they would steal from the celebrities Lee idolized and spent countless hours reading about.
Teenagehood is a time where we definitely feel disconnected from, who we are. We're learning who we are. We're learning what we want to be. And when we have celebrities modeling it to us, it's so tantalizing to get sucked up in their world.
And there was no world that Rachel Lee wanted to belong more to than that of Paris Hilton. By 2008, the socialite had wrapped filming of her reality show, The Simple Life, and was arguably one of the biggest stars in the world.
She was very much famous for being famous.
It really was the start of stars being famous just for being famous and not necessarily because they were talented or had something particular to offer. It really was this era of reality show stars becoming celebrities.
You look gorgeous, Paris. Paris, you're still...
Hilton's every move was documented by the paparazzi, and what the paparazzi didn't capture on camera, Hilton was posting on social media. Hilton's social media savvy made her the perfect target. They knew where Hilton was at all times, and more importantly, where she wasn't.
She's constantly busy. She's constantly out partying at nightclubs.
Their first target was Paris Hilton, and I guess their rationale was that maybe she'll leave her door open.
Prugo searched the internet to find out where Hilton lived and consulted her schedule of public appearances to determine when she would be out of town. He then used Google Earth to get a lay of the land.
So they figure out how to get into the compound by going up a hill in the back.
First, they rang the front doorbell. If Paris answered, they planned on coming up with an excuse for why they were there. But no one answered.
So they check under the mat, and sure enough, there's a key.
They didn't have to break any windows. They didn't have to trip any alarms. They just opened it up.
Once inside, Prugo served as a lookout near the stairs while Lee went into a bedroom and searched through Hilton's belongings.
Once the duo were certain the coast was clear, they were in no hurry to leave.
They reportedly said that they found cocaine there, so they were doing coke, kind of just partying.
Prugo claimed they only took some expensive bras and a designer dress since they planned to come back for more in the coming weeks.
They hoped she wouldn't notice anything missing, so they only took things worth about maybe $3,000 or $4,000. For Paris, that was nothing.
Prugo and Lee's foray into major crime had proved a major success. And for an encore, they would commit a string of heists so stunning, they'd become notorious. In 2008, two wealthy teens from Calabasas, California, joined forces to commit a brazen heist at the home of reality star Paris Hilton. Though unknown at the time, the two were the founding members of what will become to be known as the notorious Bling Ring, a criminal enterprise so audacious it would inspire a Hollywood movie featuring Emma Watson.
I want to rob.
The idea that they wanted to go and rob the stuff from people that they actually admired and envied, that's a pretty bizarre story.
We, thought these people are celebrities, they have everything.
Following the brash burglary at Paris Hilton's mansion, Nick Prugo and Rachel Lee were on a natural high. But Prugo would later tell police he was just along for the ride, that Lee was the true mastermind calling the shots.
She wanted to break in and wander around their homes, dress like they dress, live like they live, and with Prugo's help, rob them.
They craved the excitement of traipsing through a celebrity's house, and even better was the bling that came with it.
It was a phrase they used to use when they would go on these little burglary field trips. They used to call it going shopping, going on a shopping trip.
Prugo said they would just go inside, grab a suitcase, and fill it up.
The first heist was so easy that they decided to bring other members of their group along, for a total of 5 different burglaries at Hilton's home.
The band of thieves grew when they brought in Courtney Ames and her friend Roy Lopez Jr., who joined them on their next excursion to Paris Hilton's house in December of 2008. But this time, they didn't manage to stay under the radar.
On one occasion, their friend Roy Lopez Jr. single-handedly stole nearly $2 million worth of jewelry and other items.
Lopez had violated the group's rule of stealing small amounts and staying under the radar. Hilton noticed the missing cash and jewelry. The robbery made newspaper headlines. That didn't stop Lee and Prugo from robbing again.
The media kind of found the break-in amusing. It wasn't really taken very seriously.
This is at a time when she was at her most Paris Hilton-like. The idea of someone that carries around this incredibly expensive dog in an incredibly expensive purse, the idea of getting too worked up about her having been relieved of some of these luxuries meant that while this might be reported on the news, you were more likely to hear it on one of these entertainment shows, and most people probably heard about it by the late-night comedians who would talk about it.
Despite the jokes, Paris Hilton had real concerns.
Paris said she genuinely feared for her life because anything could have happened if she had been confronted by the burglar. Now, true enough, she wasn't physically harmed, but this is the type of thing that will stay with someone for years.
But Paris wouldn't be their only victim. While they considered other celebrity homes to raid, the original duo found easy pickings nearby.
Prugo and Lee checked the doors of expensive cars parked in their neighborhood on an almost nightly basis.
We're talking about models like Bentleys and Jaguars. It was that kind of neighborhood.
They would take credit cards from the vehicles and go on shopping sprees at LA's most expensive stores. According to Prugo, the duo would enter the shops dressed to the nines so that merchants never questioned the use of the credit cards.
Thievery can become an addiction, and usually what it's hiding is the underlying issues of why someone would want to steal. Generally, what we see in people who are around the teenage years is underlying mood disorders that include depression, anxiety, and stealing tends to become the high that they need to disconnect from those real issues.
The thieves had already acquired millions of dollars in stolen goods, but they were just getting started.
So the group's next target was actually Audrina Patridge from the Hills, and it's an interesting choice because she very much came from the same lifestyle as them, the same background. She really wasn't as big of a star as Paris.
Audrina first became known as a reality television personality. Then she eventually broke off into acting, and in 2008, she bought her first home in the Hollywood Hills.
On February 22, 2009, Patridge attended the Academy Awards ceremony. For Prugo and Lee, it was a perfect time to strike.
They accessed her Hollywood Hills home by entering through an unlocked door.
They took her jewelry, her passport, her laptop, and her custom-fit jeans. Everything they took totaled about $43,000.
But the heist hit a snag. The thieves were caught on a security camera.
Audrina said she was expecting to see two big burly guys, wandering around her house, but instead it was these two kids. The guy she noticed was a little bit nervous. The girl just seemed much more calm. They kept going back and forth to the same room, just loading up 2 duffel bags until they were both filled with all types of loot.
Patridge decided to release her surveillance video in the hopes that someone would recognize those responsible. On her blog, Patridge revealed she'd made lists of everything that had been taken. Most of the stolen items were replaceable, but she had also lost some sentimental belongings.
Audrina was feeling angry and vulnerable. She wanted justice.
Patridge uploaded the surveillance footage to her website and called on her army of fans to help identify the notorious intruders. But no one identified the thieves.
What I've never quite understood about the Bling Ring story was for how long they got away with it. You've got all these celebrities, of course, who have fan bases that could be mobilized at a moment's notice. You've got data, security cameras, and all the rest of you. You'd have thought that they'd have been caught and taken care of relatively quickly.
But Bling Ring members benefited from their upscale suburban background. Dressed in the latest designer clothes, no one suspected that teenagers were thieves.
These kids fit into the neighborhood. They weren't outsiders. So if a neighbors saw a group of these kids walking around the street, nobody's suspicion was really raised.
Seemingly unfazed by the growing publicity of their robberies, the notorious teens plotted their next attack. But would their brazen arrogance end up getting them caught? After burglarizing the home of reality TV star Paris Hilton, Nick Prugo and Rachel Lee expanded the Bling Ring to include members Courtney Ames and Roy Lopez Jr. The new group threw caution to the wind and returned to Hilton's home to steal $2 million in jewelry and luxury items. The group moved on to the Hills star Audrina Patridge, stealing more than $43,000 worth of clothes and jewelry from her Hollywood Hills home.
This felt like something very new. Thieves who only wanted to steal from homes of celebrities. And the gossip was, who might be next?
For the thieves, this was some type of exciting game. Instead of just reading about celebrities, which anybody can do, they break into their homes and start touching their possessions, which takes this obsession to a whole new level.
After the ring burglarized Audrina Patridge's home, the actress posted the surveillance video on her website.
Prugo claimed he was getting a little bit nervous now that the video was getting so much publicity. He didn't know if he wanted to rob anymore. But Lee assured him everything was going to be all right.
To the left, please, Rachel. And Rachel, can go on right here. Rachel, right here.
Prugo and Lee prepared to strike again.
Their next target was Rachel Bilson, one of the stars of The O.C.
Prugo had done his homework. He found out that Bilson had a 4-bedroom Spanish-style home in Los Feliz. She bought it for $1.8 million.
Rachel Lee felt a particular affinity with this woman with the same name, but who was also famous and rich.
Prugo and Lee scouted the house, scoping out entry points on leisurely drive-bys, sometimes stopping to spy with binoculars. Prugo's online research showed Bilson was leaving for a trip to New York. As soon as the paparazzi photos of her at LAX appeared, the thieves pounced.
It was pretty audacious. They broke into the same home 5 times in 1 month.
They stole goods worth over $130,000, including more than 30 purses, most of Bilson's designer clothes, and almost all of her jewelry.
The haul included several sentimental gifts that were given to Rachel by her mother and her grandmother, and that's what upset her the most. One of the things taken was her mother's engagement ring, as well as vintage shoes that she had been collecting over the years.
The burglaries of Rachel Bilson really changed the tide of the Bling Ring. People really started to think, hey, who are these people? We really want to know who's breaking in, because Rachel was a media darling. She didn't have any bad stories about her in the press. She had a great reputation, and that kind of made people a lot more curious and a lot more eager to find out who these people were.
The media tried out catchy names for the thieves.
The LAPD started out calling them the Hollywood Hills Burglars, but that just wasn't appealing enough. And then TMZ wound up calling them the Burglar Bunch.
The name that stuck came from the Los Angeles Times, the Bling Ring.
The name was right on the money. Lee and Prugo were very selective about the things they took. They had a great knowledge of expensive items. Chanel, Cartier, Prada, Dolce & Gabbana. Only the best was good enough for them.
The purpose for the robberies was to keep most of the fashionable clothing that the celebrities were wearing and wear them to make themselves seem like celebrities. I think it speaks for itself as to the superficial nature of these young people.
Some people feel entitled to be able to take other people's possessions. Possessions are really a marker of how we move up society in the material world that we live in today.
As for the clothing and jewelry they didn't want to keep, the teens sold it on the Venice Beach boardwalk. As the group gained more notoriety, Prugo said Lee remained its unquestioned leader.
How the group decided to pick their victim was mostly based on who Lee wanted to rob. The primary targets are almost always women because, in the words of Prugo, Lee wanted mostly women's stuff.
After the Bilson break-in, Lee had a plethora of stolen designer dresses. Now, she wanted sexy designer lingerie. And who better to steal it from than a supermodel? Victoria's Secret's angel, Miranda Kerr. For this raid, they recruited extra help.
Alexis Nyers was the daughter of Mike Nyers, and he was the director of photography for Friends and The Nanny, and he was very much involved in the Hollywood life. So Alexis was exposed to the Hollywood lifestyle at a really young age. You know, she was very much immersed in the culture.
Alexis and Prugo had become friends through the San Fernando Valley party scene.
Prugo envied the background that Alexis came from, while Alexis liked his connections to designer clothes. The relationship between the two parties was mutually enticing.
Alexis agreed to help Lee and Prugo get into the upscale clubs on the Sunset Strip. In exchange, Lee and Prugo gave Alexis high-end clothes and jewelry stolen from celebrity homes. Alexis was abusing prescription pills and regularly spending thousands of dollars on drugs. She had a stormy relationship with her mother, which was spiraling out of control.
Tensions increased between Alexis and her mother to the point of calling the police. According to the police report, Alexis was kicked out of the house after her mother discovered she had been abusing OxyContin.
Alexis Nyers went to stay with Prugo just as he and Lee were planning their next attack. They had welcomed their fellow classmate, Diana Tamayo, into their group.
Alexis was given the ultimatum to either join them or leave.
Nyers decided to join the group.
Generally, people think that stealing tends to be a poverty-based issue, but the issue with the Bling Ring is that they generally came from middle to upper class families. So we know that stealing for the purpose of having something that they don't have is not what was driving the behavior. What seemed to be driving the behavior is that many of them were engaged in mood-altering chemicals, substance use, and many of them also struggled at school.
The newly expanded Bling Ring's next target was the home of Miranda Kerr and her boyfriend, Pirates of the Caribbean star Orlando Bloom.
Celebrity websites revealed that he was in New York shooting a new movie, and Kerr was going to be in Los Angeles for a sporting event. Kerr was one of the most prominent models in the world.
Miranda, straight ahead. Miranda, for me again. Miranda, eyes straight away.
She was right in the middle of glamour, wealth, and fashion, and that's exactly what the Bling Ring was drawn to.
Since buying the property 2 years earlier, Bloom had spent a considerable sum upgrading security, but the cameras were no deterrent. The Bling Ring cut through a fence to enter the property. They walked backwards in an attempt to hide from security cameras.
There were cameras that captured the burglaries at Patridge and Hilton's homes. So this time, they wore hoodies and walked backwards, but this was pointless because there were also cameras inside the home.
All 4 of the intruders were filmed approaching the door. They found their way in through an open window. Any alarm system appeared to be off. Once inside, they started ransacking the place.
The operation took about 3 hours. They found and stole a large amount of clothing, as well as Bloom's Rolex watch collection, Louis Vuitton luggage, and artwork.
The security video showed 2 of the 4 figures going up and down the hill several times with large bags.
There was just so much stuff they liked. They were overwhelmed about what they were going to steal.
According to Prugo, Rachel Lee decided she wanted to steal far more than just Kerr's designer lingerie. Lee was planning a move to Las Vegas, so she helped herself to pieces from Bloom's art collection to decorate her future home.
In addition to artwork, 14 watches were stolen, including the watch that Sean Connery wore in Goldfinger. It was a 1950s Rolex Milagros, worth about $200,000. Now, when Bloom found out that was stolen, he was furious.
The property they had stolen was worth nearly $500,000.
Including this new heist, the Bling Ring had now netted a total of $3 million in cash, clothes, and valuables.
I don't think they thought this through. These are very self-absorbed adolescents who wanted to be famous.
The newly expanded Bling Ring had raised the stakes by deciding to raid the home of a Hollywood A-lister. But would they finally get caught in the act? Raised in a well-to-do community in Southern California, Nick Prugo and Rachel Lee were teenagers with a criminal attraction to the rich and famous. In October 2008, they began a string of high-profile burglaries that made them notorious. Targeting the homes of celebrities, they stole millions of dollars worth of designer goods. The press named them the Bling Ring. Paris Hilton, Audrina Patridge, Rachel Bilson, and Miranda Kerr had been only a few of the Bling Ring victims. Their exploits would eventually inspire a book, an episode of Law & Order, a cable movie, and a major film by Academy Award-nominated director Sofia Coppola, starring Emma Watson.
Come on, let's go to Paris's. I want to rob.
But in July 2009, the Bling Ring was still on the loose and on the rise. Their latest target was Victoria's Secret model Miranda Kerr.
Miranda for me again.
Kerr was one of the most prominent models in the world. She was also the live-in girlfriend of British actor Orlando Bloom.
Prugo, Alexis, Lee, and Tamayo accessed the premises by cutting through a security fence.
The teens stole nearly $500,000 worth of property, taking off with artwork, Rolex watches, and designer clothes.
The idea that they thought they could do it and get away with it speaks volumes as to the character of these individuals. How do you raise people to think it's okay to break into people's homes, steal their stuff, and wear it like it's yours?
These were young adults and teenagers living in and around celebrity culture. You know, their targets were all celebrities, and at the time, social media was first getting its footing. So for the first time, we could really see what celebrities were doing, what they were wearing, what they were owning, and what they had. The Bling Ring wanted to become closer to celebrities, to have what they have.
Would any of these individual teenagers break into a home and steal stuff by themselves? I don't think so. I think they did it because of the group, and your individual responsibility is diminished in a group, and a group will do things that individuals themselves would never do.
The group of brazen thieves selected their next target, actress Megan Fox.
Fox's career was on high. She had been busy making 2 of the Transformer movies, plus she was in high demand for photo shoots.
In August 2009, she was living with her husband-to-be, actor Brian Austin Green. best known for his role in the TV series Beverly Hills 90210. The thieves could have slipped into the home through a doggy door in the kitchen.
They didn't go crazy this time. They only took a little bit of loot, including an expensive watch. But they did take something a little bit different this time, and that was Green's semi-automatic handgun.
The burglary went unnoticed. Green didn't realize his gun was missing, and he thought other items had simply been misplaced. After the Fox Green heist, Rachel Lee was set for her move to Las Vegas to live with her stepfather.
Prugo said he drove her there in a car that was loaded with possessions and clothes that they had stolen from the stars' homes.
But according to Prugo, Lee soon began to miss the excitement of her previous life and returned to LA for another burglary.
Lee regarded Lindsay Lohan as the ultimate fashion icon. The actress was living in a $10,000 a month rental property.
Once again, the thieves researched the property on the internet. Next, they descended upon the house, prying open a window with a screwdriver.
They stole watches, an Hermes bag, 2 paintings, a fur coat, and many other valuables.
Lohan returned at 3 a.m. and was shocked to find the front door unlocked and the alarm switched off. Her belongings had clearly been disturbed. She immediately phoned her father, who called the police.
Lohan estimated that the property stolen was worth over $100,000. She was devastated and immediately decided to find a new place to live.
Images from Lohan's security cameras became public. The Bling Ring had taken too many chances, and the net was tightening.
The anxiety of breaking into people's homes caused Prugo to become so physically ill that he couldn't eat or sleep, and he began losing his hair even. It was only a matter of time before Prugo confessed to the crimes himself.
And he did confess, just not to the cops. In September of 2009, police received an anonymous tip from a caller who had overheard 2 teens talking about committing the high-profile robbery at the home of actress Lindsay Lohan. The caller identified the thieves as Nick Prugo and Rachel Lee. Detectives turned to social media to track them down.
The advent of social networking has been a great boon to law enforcement. If a person comes up as a suspect, those social sites will be searched by the police in an attempt to determine what's going on in their life.
Police arrested Nick Prugo on September 17, 2009. At first, he was uncooperative, but detectives turned up the heat.
Local police spent a considerable amount of time practicing and implementing ways to effectively interrogate their suspects. Typically, only those who have knowledge of how the tactics are used know how to hold their ground. Prugo's history of anxiety in his young age didn't fare too well when the police decided to further pursue him.
Once Prugo started talking, the floodgates opened. Before they could even offer him a plea bargain, the police knew all about Prugo's circle of friends.
Prugo confirmed to police that his accomplice was his friend, Rachel Lee. Rachel Lee was arrested at her father's home in Las Vegas.
The police said she calmly asked hypothetical questions about how it might help her if she answered questions about the robbery.
When they searched her residence, there was no sign of the artwork Prugo claimed Lee had stolen from Orlando Bloom's home. But police did find topless photos of Paris Hilton, which had been taken from her unlocked safe. They also seized one of Hilton's coats, 2 computers, and other items linked to Lohan and Patridge.
They also found $20,000 in cash and a scrap piece of paper with a list of the names of their accomplices.
Police quickly arrested the list of accomplices. The detectives interrogated the suspects one by one.
One of the foundational keys to getting information from a group of criminals such as this is to break them up and keep them apart from one another from the very earliest moments of their arrest. The group quickly spiraled out of control as they all turned against one another in order to seek shorter sentences.
In court, The accused Bling Ring members would be dealt with separately. For the notorious Bling Ring, the fun of ransacking houses and partying off the proceeds was over. They now were in serious trouble. The question became, could they use their youth and good looks to convince a jury to go easy on them, or would they end up doing hard time in jail? In 2008 and 2009, a string of home invasions in the Hollywood Hills captured the nation's attention. The thieves targeted Hollywood's elite and were dubbed the Bling Ring. During their almost year-long campaign, they stole more than $3 million in cash, designer clothes, and other valuables from stars including Paris Hilton, Megan Fox, and Orlando Bloom. After ring member Nick Prugo was captured and confessed, the other suspects were rounded up, and the notorious Bling Ring's 10-month crime spree was finally over.
The group was charged with residential burglary, and each member of the group had their bail set at $50,000.
They faced a range of charges, including burglary and possession of stolen property.
How does Mr. Prugo plead?
He'll plead not guilty.
Diana Tamayo?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
Roy Lopez?
Not guilty, Your Honor. Denying any official allegation.
Thank you. And Courtney Ames?
Not guilty.
In court, prosecutors had Prugo's confession, hours of security video, and numerous recovered stolen items. They also had the grand jury testimonies from the celebrity victims.
They talked about walking into their Hollywood Hills homes and finding them ransacked. Now, for Paris Hilton, she noticed something was amiss when she saw dirty shoe prints leading up to her bedroom. For Rachel Bilson, she was so devastated, she couldn't even stay in her own home for a month. Their testimony was key to what would become a 724-page indictment. But the defendants hired good lawyers, and ultimately, many of the serious charges wound up being dropped.
Rachel Lee pleaded no contest to stealing more than $25,000 worth of valuables from the home of Audrina Patridge. A number of other charges were dismissed. On October 25, 2011, Lee was sentenced to 4 years in prison. She was released on parole a year and 4 months later. Before becoming involved with the Bling Ring, Alexis Nyers was an aspiring reality TV star, filming a pilot about her hard-partying lifestyle.
I see myself as an activist, someone who can speak out for young women and teach them the ins and outs of what this life is like.
The producers now had a stronger story. This spoiled rich kid who just wants to stay out of jail. But when she shows up for court, she came there with her own camera crew, a makeup artist, and she walked in like a runway model in high heels.
Nyers instead pleaded no contest for her crimes.
Ms. Nyers, you're charged in felony, commonly known as first-degree residential burglary of Orlando Bloom's residence.
She received 180 days in jail, 3 years probation, and was ordered to pay $600,000 in restitution to Orlando Bloom. She ended up serving only 30 days.
Ironically, Lindsay Lohan wound up in the same cell block for breaking probation after a drunk driving conviction.
Even in jail, you can spot celebrities when you're in Hollywood.
Diana Tamayo also pleaded no contest to burglary charges and was sentenced to 3 years probation, plus 60 days of community service. Prosecutors were unable to prove Roy Lopez Jr.'s association to the robbery at Paris Hilton's home. Burglary charges were dropped, and Lopez pleaded no contest to receiving stolen jewelry. He received 3 years probation. Courtney Ames, who had initially been accused of receiving stolen goods with the intent to sell, appeared in court wearing a Chanel beaded necklace, which an eagle-eyed LAPD detective realized had been stolen from Lindsay Lohan. It was promptly seized.
She claimed to have been given it by another member of the Bling Ring. She said she had no idea it was stolen.
In December of 2012, Ames received 3 years probation and 2 months of community service for receiving stolen property. Various other charges were dropped. Last to be sentenced was Nick Prugo, who had confessed the crimes and perpetrators to police. He pleaded no contest to the burglaries of Patridge and Lohan and received a 2-year prison sentence. Having been in custody for a year prior to his conviction, Prugo would soon be free.
Prugo was given credit for time served, good behavior, and work time.
Many felt the Bling Ring members got off too easily.
These are major crimes. They weren't mastermind crimes, but this is a major crime. You can't just break into somebody's house, take their stuff. That's ridiculous. If this was a group of young people from Watts, would they have gotten 1.5 years in jail for crimes that resulted in millions of dollars worth of valuables taken and multiple burglaries? They could have been prosecuted in a very, very extensive way.
The story of LA's rich and famous being victimized was tailor-made for Hollywood.
The season premiere of Law & Order LA used the case as a model for their first episode. Lifetime even made a movie about the burglaries.
Next came a feature film, The Bling Ring, from respected director Sofia Coppola. Alexis Nyers and Nick Prugo were brought on as story consultants. Paris Hilton played herself.
They actually used her house to shoot the break-in at her house. That's how real life the movie was.
I just have so much respect for Sofia Coppola. I think she really portrayed what happened and how serious it was.
Paris Hilton, Megan Fox, Lindsay Lohan. When you consider who their victims were and how long they got away with it for, that's a peculiar story. And I think that's what gives it its notorious quality.
Break-ins and thefts from the homes of rich Hollywood celebrities still regularly make the news. And stars remain on their guard, as there's always a chance history will repeat itself.
The Bling Ring targeted pop culture celebrities, quite purposefully. It might have been easier to rip off just really wealthy people who weren't well known, but no, they knew that doing this would get them the attention they were craving.
Take a group of teenagers, among them being the privileged, the entitled, the celebrity crazed, throw in some drugs, and then put them in an area in which celebrities leave their doors unlocked. You're most likely going to have something like what came to be known as the Bling Ring.
A roving band of teenagers in Hollywood breaking into their favorite stars whose clothes they like the best really says something about life in America.
The Bling Ring showed everyone the thin line between fame and infamy, which is why they will always be notorious.